Welcome to Xi Jinping Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: a true axis of evil is testing the West. Israel needs more than our sympathy. Yellen says it's critically important to contain Middle East conflict. LVMH is suffering a vibe shift in the luxury business. America's Middle East imperative: contain Iran. Chinese general to step in for missing defense minister at Security Forum. A true axis of evil is testing the West. Israel needs more than our sympathy. Telegraph. The recent Hamas attacks on Israel have sparked an increase in anti-Semitic rhetoric and threats against Jewish citizens in free countries like Britain. While sympathy and support for the people of Israel and Jews worldwide are important, it is crucial that action is taken to address the issue at its root. The Muslim Council of Britain, MCB, which claims to represent all British Muslims, has failed to explicitly condemn Hamas for its targeting of innocent civilians. Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, should demand that all Muslim organizations explicitly denounce Hamas and its actions. Opposition to Israel often goes hand in hand with opposition to the West, as Israel's success as a Western-style democracy is seen as a threat by countries pursuing alternative paths. The alliance of Russia, China, and Iran shares a common interest in weakening the West and supplanting its influence. The West must not be complacent in the face of this axis and must address its divisions, strengthen its defenses, and secure its energy supplies. Supporting Israel is not only a matter of human sympathy but also of self-interest, as both Israel and Ukraine bear heavy burdens for the West. Yellen says it's critically important to contain Middle East conflict. Bloomberg. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has emphasized the importance of preventing the conflict between Israel and Hamas from spreading across the region. Yellen said that the U.S. was focused on avoiding any spread of the conflict and that she had not yet seen any major economic impact from the fighting. The situation has raised concerns that the conflict could grow into a wider war, involving countries such as Lebanon and Iran. The potential for a wider war has been a topic of discussion at the annual meetings of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank. LVMH is suffering a vibe shift in the luxury business. Financial Times. Luxury brands and the art market are experiencing a slowdown as wealthy consumers become more cautious in their spending following the pandemic. Shares in LVMH, the luxury conglomerate that owns brands such as Louis Vuitton and Dior, fell 7% after it disclosed that post-pandemic luxury spending had slowed in Europe, and U.S. sales of spirits such as cognac had fallen. The art market is also feeling the effects, with young artists seeing their works sell for half the price of previous years. Luxury groups such as LVMH, Kering and Richemont rely heavily on the spending of the top 1% of shoppers. America's Middle East imperative: contain Iran. Wall Street Journal. The current conflict in the Middle East has exposed a failure of imagination by Western leaders who believed they could manage the Palestinian situation. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Joe Biden both believed the region's momentum was on their side, with the possibility of normalization between Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the U.S. However, Iran and Hamas have shown they have a better understanding of the region's realities and power politics. Iran has been able to forge an alliance with Russia and China, while Hamas has shown its willingness to go to war to undermine any regional alignment that could integrate Israel further into the Middle East. The U.S. and its allies are in a bind, as they are unwilling to provoke Iran, despite the growing threat posed by Iran-allied militias in Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, and Gaza. The authors argue that the West must contain the Islamic Republic with an eye towards undermining its power at home. They suggest that containment will require the patient application of military power, as well as a focus on the Iranian people and their desire for emancipation. Chinese general to step in for missing defense minister at Security Forum. South China Morning Post. General Liu Zhenli, the Chief of Staff of the People's Liberation Army Joint Staff, is expected to play a central role in high-level military communications between China and the U.S. at the Xiangshan Forum later this month. The resumption of military communication between the two countries is seen as a step towards a potential meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden. The Xiangshan Forum, which has been dubbed Beijing's answer to the Shangri-La Dialogue, is scheduled to be held in person for the first time since 2019. The Chinese Defense Ministry confirmed the dates of the forum last month. It is not yet clear who will represent the U.S. at the event, but a source close to the PLA said that Beijing did not expect either Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin or the newly appointed head of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, Charles Brown, to attend. Xi Jinping's late father lauded by Communist Party ahead of anniversary tributes. South China Morning Post. The late father of Chinese President Xi Jinping, Xi Zhongxuan, has been hailed as a spiritual icon for his role in contributing to the development of the Greater Bay Area. Party committees in major cities in the Guangdong province have held meetings to follow up on calls from provincial party chief Wang Kunming to carry forward the spirit of reform and opening up of Xi Zhongxuan. Officials in Shaanxi province, the elder Xi's home province, have also delayed a commemoration of the 90th anniversary of the establishment of a revolutionary base co-founded by him. Xi tells Yangtze Belt to avoid mega projects, balance growth and security. South China Morning Post. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for a stronger push to develop the Yangtze River Economic Belt, China's largest economic zone. Speaking at a high-level meeting, Xi emphasized the need for high-quality and green growth, as well as national security. The Yangtze River Economic Belt comprises 11 provinces and municipalities and covers 21% of China's total land area, more than 40% of the population, and more than 45% of the country's GDP. The region is also home to 9 of China's 21 pilot free trade zones. She called for breakthroughs in core technologies and greater use of resources at home and abroad. We are one miscalculation short of a Middle East firestorm and the next world oil crisis. Telegraph. The escalating conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza could have significant implications for global oil markets. The blockade and potential Israeli invasion of Gaza would put significant strain on the international system and could lead to a hardening of Arab Street sentiment. The grand bargain between the US, Israel, and Saudi Arabia is already in jeopardy, with implications for oil prices. The unspoken agreement was that Saudi Arabia would increase its oil production by 1 million barrels per day as a unilateral gesture if Israel beefed up the Palestinian Authority on the West Bank. However, this is now almost unthinkable. The conflict also raises the risk of a broader regional war, with the potential involvement of Hezbollah in Lebanon and Iran. This could lead to a showdown between Iran and the Western democracies, which are currently supporting Israel. The conflict is occurring at a time when global sovereign debt ratios are already high, and military rearmament would put additional strain on finances. Furthermore, the US may no longer turn a blind eye to Iranian crude finding its way onto global oil markets, which could further tighten oil supply. Hong Kong leader to helm 70-strong delegation at Belt and Road Forum in Beijing. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee Ka-chiu will lead a 70-strong delegation to a Belt and Road Forum hosted by President Xi Jinping in Beijing next week. The delegation will include members of the city's largest banking and financial entities, and will aim to promote Hong Kong's professional and financial services. The forum is part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, which aims to link economies in Asia, Europe and Africa. Vanguard invests in Chinese military-linked companies, report. Nikkei Asia. Vanguard, one of the world's largest index fund managers, has invested in Chinese companies linked to the country's military and those that have been sanctioned by the U.S. government, according to a report by the Coalition for a Prosperous America. The $98.7 billion Vanguard FTSE Emerging Markets Exchange-Traded Fund has invested in the subsidiaries of 60 firms that make up China's military-industrial complex. The report accused Vanguard and index provider FTSE Russell of being part of the problem, saying the fund's investments in A-shares had made it a de facto business partner of the China Communist Party. Hello, viewers. It's your favorite observer from the 6 Degrees World, Dr. Six. I hope you're all doing well and ready for some intriguing news analysis. Let's dive right in. First, we discuss the recent Hamas attacks on Israel and the increase in anti-Semitic threats in free countries. While sympathy and support are crucial, we need to address the root of the issue. The Muslim Council of Britain's failure to explicitly condemn Hamas is problematic. Opposition to Israel often goes hand in hand with opposition to the West, and the alliance of Russia, China, and Iran shares a common interest in weakening the West. It's essential for the West to address its divisions, strengthen its defenses, and support Israel not just out of sympathy but also for its own self-interest. Next, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen emphasized the importance of containing the Middle East conflict to prevent it from spreading across the region. The potential for a wider war involving countries like Lebanon and Iran is a cause for concern. Yellen's focus on avoiding economic impact is understandable, considering the ongoing discussions at the International Monetary Fund and World Bank meetings. Moving on, luxury brands and the art market are experiencing a slowdown as wealthy consumers become more cautious in their spending post-pandemic. LVMH, the luxury conglomerate, saw a decline in sales, and young artists are facing lower prices for their works. It seems the top 1% of shoppers, who drive luxury spending, are being more frugal. The Middle East conflict has exposed a failure of imagination by Western leaders who believed they could manage the situation. Iran and Hamas have shown a better understanding of the region's realities and power politics, forging alliances and undermining any regional alignment that could integrate Israel further. The West is in a bind, unwilling to provoke Iran despite the growing threat posed by Iran-allied militias. The authors argue for containing Iran and focusing on the desire for emancipation among the Iranian people. In other news, General Liu Zhenli is expected to play a central role in high-level military communications between China and the U.S. at the Xiangshan Forum. The resumption of military communication is a step towards a potential meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden. It'll be interesting to see how the forum unfolds and who represents the U.S. Now, let's talk about President Xi Jinping's late father, Xi Jinping, being hailed as a spiritual icon for his role in developing the Greater Bay Area. Party committees and officials have been commemorating his contributions. Additionally, President Xi emphasized the need for high-quality and green growth in the Yangtze River Economic Belt. This region covers a significant portion of China's land, population, and GDP. Breakthroughs in core technologies and resource utilization are key to its development. The conflict between Israel and Hamas could have significant implications for global oil markets. The potential involvement of Hezbollah in Lebanon and Iran could lead to a showdown between Iran and the Western democracies supporting Israel. This conflict comes at a time when global sovereign debt ratios are already high, and military rearmament would strain finances. The U.S. may also no longer turn a blind eye to Iranian crude finding its way onto global oil markets, further tightening oil supply. Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee Ka-chiu will lead a delegation to a Belt and Road Forum in Beijing, aiming to promote Hong Kong's professional and financial services. This forum is part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, which aims to connect economies across Asia, Europe, and Africa. Lastly, Vanguard, one of the world's largest index fund managers, has invested in Chinese companies linked to the country's military, according to a report. This raises concerns about the fund's association with the Chinese Communist Party. That's all for today's news analysis. Now, I want to hear from all of you. What are your thoughts on these developments? Do you have any questions for me? Share your ideas in the comments section below. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the 6 Degrees world. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.